life dealing with Eastern Europe particularly, and I remember those countries in the depths of the Cold War, and I remember watching them become free and independent in 89 to 1991, and I don't want the clock to go backwards again, and that's what I see. And it worries me a lot that just what's happening in Georgia seems to me to be both astonishing and atrocious. We've had multiple cases over the last year or two of armed attacks on Georgia. We've had the Russian plane flying over and trying to bomb a NATO standard radar station that Georgia had built. The missile went adrift. There was the rocket attack in the Kadori Gorge. Again, luckily nobody killed. The economic blockade, the deportations from Moscow, in which, don't forget, 2 people were killed. The deportations of people, in some cases, who were Russian citizens whose only crime was to have a Georgian surname. Now the de facto, as the Georgians put it, annexation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Now, I'm not saying the Georgians are right about everything, but it seems to me that in a rational world, it would be in Russia's interests to make the Georgians like Russia. If Russia was a really attractive neighbour, then you wouldn't get all the countries round about it scrambling to join NATO. And it was one of the most puzzling things to me in Eastern Europe in the early 1990s, was watching the enormous moral capital which Gorbachev and then Yeltsin had accumulated in these, what you might call former captive nations, these countries that had been part of the Soviet Empire. And to some extent we're very grateful to Gorbachev and to Yeltsin for freeing them. And then seeing all that being squandered by people like Primakov, and these other sort of proto-Siloviki, I think was a terrible. I mean, it's the opposite of soft power in a way. I mean, making your neighbours hate you is an odd kind of foreign policy. But and I think the best example of this was that when there was one of the times when Russia pulled one of the early stunts in Georgia. It was either the helicopter attack or the missile attack. I can't remember which, and which I think are done basically. For 2 reasons. They're done to try and provoke Saakashvili to do something stupid, and they are also to test Western reaction. How much is the West going to care about this? Now, this stunt in Georgia came just before an absolutely crucial vote at the UN on Iran, and the Bush administration decided it was so important to get the Russians on side for this vote that they wouldn't complain about Georgia. So the Georgians complained to the Security Council, said it's outrageous, we're being attacked, like that, and got absolutely nowhere. And I asked a senior administration official the other day, do you remember what that vote was? And even this person who'd actually been involved in the decision couldn't remember, because in the end it was just a vote at the UN. It didn't really matter. It didn't change. We can't look back at that vote and say that's the point at which our Iran policy started going right. And yet we actually traded off something quite important, which is that a country which is, even leaving aside anything to do with democracy, human rights, and the fact that 80% of Georgians want to join NATO, just from the purest geopolitical viewpoint, is important as the part of the energy corridor, which is our one chance of getting oil and gas from the Caspian and Central Asia on pipelines not controlled by Russia. So even from the sort of crudest point of view, Georgia is pretty important. And we sent a signal that we didn't care. And the next attack was bigger, and what we're seeing now is even more dramatic. So I think we've seen these kind of phony trade-offs, which are where we end up with nothing very durable. And sacrifice things that are at least symbolically quite important. And just as a contrast, I think where the EU did get something right, which was really commendable, was on when Estonia joined the Schengen visa-free space. And they did a very clever thing, which is to put the leaders of Nashi on the Schengen blacklist. Because when you join Schengen, and most countries have a blacklist, which is people who are wanted for crimes and so on. Now, the Nashi leaders, you'll recall, had attacked the Estonian embassy, had tried to turn over the Swedish ambassador's car, and had done various other things. So they put them on the blacklist. And the Nashi leaders, Russia was absolutely furious. They said, hang on, how is this? So, these important Russian political figures can no longer go to Germany because Estonia says they can't? Come off it. And luckily, the German Interior Ministry stuck up and said, sorry, Schengen's Schengen. If you've got a problem, take it up with the Estonians. And that was a good example of how European soft power can actually work when European countries stick together. But I don't see, but the Bush administration, I think, is pretty weak.